Hi everyone. So this is going to be the last video for the production possibilities frontier, as well as the last video to conclude chapter 2. I'm purposefully going to try and keep this one relatively short, since there's not too much left over in the second chapter that we have left to go to. Um, so let's see, hopefully if I can get that done. Hi everyone. So this is going to be part 3 of the video series on the production possibilities frontier, as well as the last video on the production possibilities frontier, as well as the last video for chapter 2. There's not too much left to go over in this section, so I'm going to try and, fingers crossed, keep this video on the shorter side. So let's go ahead and get started. Where we left off from last time was that we took a look at a production possibilities frontier that was more realistic, in the sense that we allowed for the fact that the workers we have in society have, of course, different skills, so they might be better suited at producing one type of good compared to the other. Um, in our case, it was wheat versus smartphone apps. And what I want to do to round out this section on the PPF in this chapter is to think about what types of implications uh, might the PPF have when we take into account the fact that not only do different workers have different specialties, but also what happens if, say, different countries have different specialties, right? So, for example, we know that, again, workers can have different skill sets, which make them better suited at producing one good versus the other. Well, what if I draw two different PPFs here? So here I'm just drawing two side by side, one representing one country and the other representing a different country, and to show the differences in what one country is good at versus what uh, another country might be good at, and what that might mean and what implications that have with regards to what we want to produce, as well as international trade. So here I'm just going to be comparing two different countries, the two different PPFs. On the left, as you can see, I have the United States, the US, and this will be their PPF, and on the right, I will have Japan's PPF there on the right. And then on the axes, I want to make sure we're measuring the same types of goods. So in this case, let's go with cars being produced here on the x-axis. And on the y-axis, let's keep going with the wheat example. I think this can be handy since, of course, every country needs wheat, you know, to make bread and to eat, right? So I think it's a good example to have being measured here on the axes. Now, just as before, I don't want to get into the math of like how to actually specifically derive the PPF when we're taking into account each country has increasing opportunity costs. So we're going to do what the same thing that we did last time. Of course, our workers here in the United States and there in Japan have different skill sets, different training, etc. So they might be better at producing one good versus the other. So both these countries are going to have curved PPFs. However, not only are they going to have different skill sets for the workers, but the PPFs might also look quite a bit different from each other as well, right? Because the situations and the resources we have available to us here in the United States, of course, can be very different compared to the resources that are available to Japan. So, for example, um, I know just from basic geography, right? The United States has much more land mass compared to Japan, right? It's a much bigger country in terms of just like pure physical size of the land we have available in the United States compared to Japan. So why is that important? That is important because, of course, if we want to say grow wheat, right, we know we need farmland, right? And of course, whoops, of course, growing wheat for on a farm, like setting aside land to use to grow wheat on for farmland, that takes quite a bit of land. So because we have more land mass, we also have more space to say grow wheat with, compared to Japan. So because of this, we should be able to grow more wheat in the United States compared to Japan, right? Which hopefully, again, that makes sense. The maximum amount of wheat we should be able to produce should be higher just due to the physical characteristics of of the geography that we have available uh, to us compared to that in Japan. So here I'm going to mark like a pretty high point on the PPF on the y-axis to represent if we put all of our resources in there, we can probably make a lot of wheat. In Japan, they have much less landmass, so I'm just going to put the maximum amount of wheat that they can produce. This will be the end point of the PPF for them, somewhere further down. So, right, so you can see it's further up on the United States compared to Japan. That is, again, just to represent that fact. Okay. But now, what about the amount of cars that we can produce? Now, honestly, I don't really know a whole lot about what it takes to like produce a car. Like I know, of course, you need factories and you need like the raw materials to make cars out of, like steel and rubber and all that kind of stuff, right? But I don't know a whole lot about uh, the car production side of things. So what I'll do is I'll just say uh, both countries can produce roughly the same number of cars. So here I'll just try and put it around like the middle, the other endpoint on the x-axis around the middle, right? And that'll be good enough for that. Um, so then I will want to draw a curve to try and connect these points here. Oh, okay. Not the neatest looking curve, but that'll do. So, what can we do with these two PPFs? So, let's start by taking a look at these two PPFs slopes. And again, just to make this a little bit easier, I'm going to use some made-up numbers here. So, remember, these 2 points here are supposed to be pretty much the same. The end point on the x-axis is supposed to be pretty much the same for both these PPFs. So here I'll just pick a number, let's say, of 100, right? But the endpoint on the y-axis, I specifically said that, well, the United States can grow more wheat. So let's make this for the United States. Mm, let's say this is 400 up here, but let's say this is only 300 for Japan. Um, so again, it's not like drawn to scale or anything, but that's not really the point, so don't worry too much about that. The main thing is here, now that we have some example numbers, we can hopefully very easily see that the slope for the United States PPF is going to be much steeper compared to the one for Japan, right? Because again, slope is rise over run, right? And as we can see here, going from this point on the y-axis to this point on the x-axis, there's a rise of 400 and a run of 100, right, for the United States. And for Japan, well, there's a rise of only 300, but there's still a run of 100. So 400 divided by 100, that's 4. 300 divided by 100, that is 3, right? So hopefully then it makes sense. We using the little bit of math here, and just by just kind of like looking at these the shapes of these two PPFs, right? We can see clearly the United States has a steeper slope on its PPF compared to Japan. Furthermore, since the slope represents the opportunity cost of producing one car in this case, right? This means that the US has a higher opportunity cost of producing cars compared to Japan, right? Because again, it's just rise over run. The slope here for the United States will be steeper compared to Japan. Therefore, the slope number will be higher. Therefore, the opportunity cost of producing each car in the United States is higher compared to Japan. So, what does this tell us? That means that if these two countries were going to trade with each other, what would make more sense for each country to specialize their production in, right? Because there are two options here. In reality, of course, there would be many more options than just two, but in this example, there are two options. The United States and Japan can specialize into either producing a lot of wheat or producing a lot of cars. And would it make more sense for one country to specialize in one good rather than the other? And the answer is yes. So because the opportunity cost of producing cars is much higher, right, in the United States compared to Japan, that means that in general, the United States should specialize more into wheat, and therefore Japan should specialize more into cars since they conversely have the lower opportunity cost of producing cars. Um, and this can work out because if the United States specializes in producing wheat, they can trade with Japan by selling some of the wheat to Japan and then buying some of Japan's cars. And if Japan wants more wheat, to make bread out of, for example, then they can buy uh, some of the wheat that the United States produces and sell some of the cars that they're making over in Japan to the United States. So this is essentially the core idea of how international trade functions. Is that usually for lots of different reasons, different countries will be better at producing some goods compared to other goods. In this very simplified example, the United States is better at growing wheat, again, due to, in this example, much bigger landmass, so we have more physical space to grow wheat with compared to Japan. So it makes more sense for the United States to grow more wheat and specialize more into wheat compared to Japan, who in this example would be specializing more in the production of cars. And that works out for uh, all the different countries that are trading with each other across the world. Of course, that's not to say like the United States only produces wheat and we don't produce any cars, or that Japan only produces cars and doesn't grow any wheat for themselves, because obviously that's not true, right? We're just saying that in general, uh, the idea is that some countries are better suited at producing certain types of goods, whether due to like natural resources or whatever, the experience of the workers, etc. There are going to be some countries which are better suited at producing certain types of goods compared to other types of goods, right? We can do the same thing if, for example, we were considering like the different climates of different countries, where maybe certain types of crops grow better in colder climates and other crops grow better in warmer climates, right? Same sort of thing. There can be different PPFs then for different countries depending on what type of climate that they're in and what types of crops we're looking at, right? So this idea helps illustrate a concept in economics, which is called comparative advantage. So, because, uh, actually, let's do it like this. Because Japan has the lower opportunity cost of producing cars, they have what is called comparative advantage in the production of cars compared to the United States, right? Similarly, the United States has the lower opportunity cost of producing wheat. So they have comparative advantage in producing wheat. Uh, and the main takeaway here is that trade, well, in general, trade is based off of which nations have comparative advantage in the production of which goods. The general idea just being specialize according to whatever goods you have comparative advantage in producing, and then trade for whatever else you might need. That's the general idea behind international trade, and how international trade works. Of course, there's a lot more to it than just that, because there's also issues of like, political issues, like, well, what if for whatever reasons there might be sanctions or against some countries, or maybe several different nations might not want to trade with each other because, again, political reasons, etc. Right, and there are other things to consider, like exchange rates, how strong or weak the respective currencies are in the United States versus Japan, and all that kind of stuff, right? But that's the general premise of of trade. Now, here I've done this in the example of different nations having different PPFs, but we can also think about it in terms of PPFs at, say, the individual level as well, because of course, we are also capable at the individual level, like you and I, are also capable of producing different types of goods and services as well. As I said from several videos ago, right? I've studied economics, so I feel comfortable teaching economics and doing economics like lectures, but I don't really know anything about chemistry. I haven't taken a chemistry course since I was in high school. So my PPF for producing different types of lectures, for example, where if I were to measure economics courses or economics lectures down here and chemistry lectures up here, then my PPF might look something like this, where it's very, very flat looking, right? Because again, I remember very little about chemistry, so I wouldn't be able to, do a whole lot of lectures based on chemistry. I might be able to handle like some very basic introductory level type lectures, in which case I could, do those, but the more advanced ones, certainly not. But I've studied economics for all of my college career and my grad school career, so I feel pretty confident in my knowledge in that. So that's why the PPR expands outwards like this. Now, of course, as I said from before, there's just a very specific example based off like two different types of lectures, but we can expand this outward to any two different types of goods as well. So this is how trade between just like regular people happens at the individual level as well. If I wanted, say, for example, to get money to buy some food, well, I don't know much about growing food, but I know there are restaurants where I can get food at, and well, I can buy the food that I need using the money I earn from, teaching. Um, and if someone in the restaurant business wanted a course in economics, wanted to learn stuff about economics, well, then they can use the money that they earn from working at a restaurant to take a course in college, right? So uh, the idea here is in real life, in the individual on the individual level as well, we also have ideas of comparative advantage. I would have comparative advantage in economics lectures versus a chemistry lectures, whereas a chemistry teacher would be the opposite, right? Or if we're talking about the restaurant food versus economics lectures, again, I don't know too much about working at a restaurant, so I wouldn't be able to do much on that front, but I would have comparative advantage in teaching economics. And restaurant workers would, of course, have comparative advantage in producing restaurant food. And Of course, we can sell the goods and services that we produce and then use that money to buy whatever else we need. It's the same idea here, except just taken at a more national level, right, with the US PPF and the Japan PPF. Okay, so that'll cover it for this lecture. That concludes our discussion on the production possibilities frontier as well as chapter 2. So yeah, I'll see you in the next video, which is the start of chapter 3.